"She looks like your late son," the millionaire's girlfriend said softly when her eyes fell on the black kid sitting by the entrance. Jonathan Richardson froze mid-step. Those words sliced through the crisp December air like a razor, sharp and unforgiving, echoing across the nearly empty parking lot of the upscale shopping plaza. Victoria, the blonde woman walking at his side, had spoken so casually, as if she were commenting on the weather, completely unaware that she had just reopened a wound that Jonathan had spent the last 5 years trying to seal. The boy sat on the curb in front of the main doors, a piece of worn cardboard in his hands, scrawled with shaky letters. He couldn't have been older than 10, the exact age David, Jonathan's son, would be if he were still alive. The resemblance was unsettling, the same tight curls, the same gentle slope of the nose, even the slight tilt of the head when he observed strangers walking by. "Jonathan, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." Victoria gave a light laugh, adjusting her luxury handbag. "Come on, let's go. The restaurant's probably filling up." But Jonathan didn't move. His gaze stayed locked on the boy, who was now watching him in return, curious but cautious. It was as if David himself had stepped out of one of those old photographs Jonathan kept hidden in his wallet, frozen in time on that devastating day of the accident. "Sir, do you have some spare change?" the boy asked, standing up with effort. His clothes were oversized and mismatched, obviously second-hand, and his sneakers were worn through, the tips of his toes peeking out. Victoria stepped back immediately, as if the sight of poverty might cling to her. "Jonathan, let's go. We shouldn't encourage this. You know how they are, always wanting more." But Jonathan barely heard her. Something in the boy's eyes pulled him in, something familiar, the same brightness, the same quiet strength he had seen in David, especially when his little boy insisted on helping him in the restaurant kitchen, dreaming of becoming a chef like his dad. "What's your name?" Jonathan asked, ignoring Victoria's growing annoyance. "Gabriel, sir. Gabriel Santos." The name seemed to echo. Jonathan felt something crack and repair itself inside his chest at the same time. It wasn't only the uncanny resemblance that struck him. It was the boy's presence. Proud even in threadbare clothes, carrying himself with a dignity Jonathan hadn't seen in years. It was the same kind of quiet pride David had shown, even when hooked to IV drips and too weak to walk. Victoria yanked at Jonathan's arm. "Enough already. We're late, and you're embarrassing yourself. Let's go." But she stopped speaking when she noticed something Jonathan had seen first. Gabriel bending down to pick up a stack of papers an older man had dropped nearby. The kid gathered every page carefully, then helped the man arrange his grocery bags before handing everything back. He didn't ask for a reward, he simply nodded and went back to his spot on the sidewalk. Jonathan couldn't look away. Every small act, the boy's focus, his quiet manners, triggered something deep inside him, a reminder of the man he used to be before grief hardened his heart. Gabriel glanced back at Jonathan and smiled shyly. It was a small, hesitant smile, but it carried a weight of resilience, of hope surviving against all odds. Victoria still didn't understand. Why would a wealthy man stand rooted in place for a ragged child sitting on concrete? After 2 years as Jonathan's partner, she knew luxury but not compassion. "Jonathan, please," she whispered sharply, glancing around. "You're making a scene. People will think you've lost it." But Jonathan wasn't listening. His mind had drifted back 5 years to that sterile hospital room where David spent his final months. Even as cancer ravaged his body, his boy had smiled at the nurses, shared toys with other sick children, and worried more about his father's sadness than his own pain. "Gabriel," Jonathan murmured, tasting the name. "How old are you?" "10, sir. I'll be 11 in March." Jonathan's chest tightened. David had died at 11. Same age, same month. Victoria groaned. "Oh, fantastic. Now you're interrogating him. Jonathan, this is pathetic. This kid probably hasn't stepped foot in a classroom. And here you are treating him like he matters. Jonathan finally turned to her, his voice firm but low. That's enough. Don't be dramatic, you know what I mean. Handouts, just bring more of them. Gabriel's head dropped slightly, his expression calm but tired. He didn't argue, didn't protest, just an old sadness in a young face, like he'd heard it all before. "Where do you stay at night, Gabriel?" Jonathan asked, ignoring the irritation in Victoria's tone. "There's a shelter a few blocks away, sir," the boy replied, "but only if there's space. When it's full, I stay right here." At the entrance of the mall, under a small overhang shielding him from the drizzle, Gabriel had made his spot. Victoria folded her arms tightly, her patience clearly running thin. "There, now you've heard his sob story. Can we go? Our table was for noon, and it's already 1/4 past." Jonathan didn't answer. His focus stayed on Gabriel, who was carefully gathering the few things he owned: a threadbare blanket, a battered notebook, and a pen so worn it looked like it had been fished out of the trash. There was something deliberate in the way the boy handled his belongings, an unusual neatness that made Jonathan curious. "What do you write in that notebook?" he asked. Gabriel hesitated, gripping the notebook as though it were a secret. I write about what I see. Stories I make up. My mom taught me how to write. Before—" his voice caught, stumbling over the word. "Before she left." "Left?" Jonathan's chest tightened. "She got sick," Gabriel said simply. "Lung cancer. She used to clean offices, but when she got too weak to work, the hospital said they couldn't help without money." He shrugged, a gesture far too old for someone his age. "She died 2 years ago." Victoria let out a short, sharp laugh. "Of course! The dead mother story. They always have some tragic tale ready. Jonathan, honestly, you're letting a 10-year-old manipulate you. It's embarrassing." But Jonathan barely heard her. He was studying the boy's eyes, and what he saw there wasn't deception. It was a familiar grief, the hollow, quiet pain of losing someone you loved, because help never came, because money decided who lived and who didn't. "Do you still write?" Jonathan asked gently. Gabriel nodded, almost shy. "Yes, I write about good people. People helping each other. Families that stay together. Kids who have moms and dads who love them." He paused, realizing how much he'd revealed. "But they're just silly stories." "They're not silly," Jonathan said firmly, surprising even himself. "Dreaming is one of the most important things we have." Victoria snorted. "Oh, for heaven's sake, are we really doing a feel-good sidewalk speech now? Jonathan, this is ridiculous. If you don't come with me right this second, I'm leaving. You can explain to everyone why you decided to play social worker instead of joining me for lunch." And that's when something shifted in Jonathan. As he turned to look at the woman he'd been with for 2 years, the woman he once thought he knew, he saw someone entirely different, a stranger. When had he stopped seeing beyond appearances? When had he let privilege make him blind to simple humanity? Sensing the tension, Gabriel started to retreat quietly. "I don't want to cause trouble, sir. Thank you for talking to me." "Wait," Jonathan said, reaching out and gently resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Have you eaten today?" Gabriel shook his head, trying to mask his embarrassment. Victoria's voice rose, sharp and final. "That's it. Last warning, Jonathan. Either you come with me right now, or we're done, right here." Jonathan's gaze moved from her to Gabriel, and for the first time in years, everything felt clear. This wasn't just about lunch or charity or defiance. This was about choosing what kind of man he wanted to be. What Victoria didn't realize was that in Gabriel's pocket was a worn student ID, proof of a boy who attended public school at night, pulling excellent grades, while spending his days just trying to survive. Gabriel carried more within him than anyone could guess. He had taught himself 3 different languages using nothing more than discarded books pulled from trash bins. Those scribbles in his tattered notebook? They weren't random at all. They were intricate, imaginative stories, the kind that could impress any literature teacher with their depth and sensitivity. But in that moment, Victoria couldn't possibly know any of this. She only saw a poor child on a sidewalk. Jonathan, however, saw something else entirely. There was a focus in his eyes, a quiet resolve that hinted at a discovery about to unfold, a discovery that would reveal far more about this boy than any wealthy, narrow-minded person could ever imagine. And it was clear, what Jonathan was about to learn wouldn't just change Gabriel's life, it would transform Jonathan's own, shifting his view of what truly mattered in this world. Jonathan's decision came without hesitation. He turned to Victoria with a calmness that startled her, a steady composure that carried more weight than anger ever could. "So, this is where we end," he said evenly, sliding his wallet from his pocket. Then to Gabriel, "How ebb?" "Out lunch. There's an Italian place nearby. They make the best pasta in the city." Victoria stood frozen for a beat, struggling to process what had just happened, that she was being set aside publicly for a street child. When the realization hit, her polished veneer cracked instantly. "You're choosing this nobody over me?" she spat, disbelief lacing every word. "Jonathan, you've completely lost it. When this little fantasy wears off and you realize what a mistake you've made, don't come crawling back. And trust me, our friends will hear about this. They'll know exactly what kind of man you are, a man who prefers the company of beggars." At that, Gabriel lowered his gaze, clearly uncomfortable with the venom being aimed his way. "Mr. Jonathan, I really don't want to cause problems. Maybe I should just go." "No," Jonathan said firmly, resting a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "You're not causing any trouble. Victoria, you can leave if you want. Gabriel and I have some things to discuss." Victoria's face hardened. With a sharp turn she stormed off, but not before throwing her final words over her shoulder, loud enough to turn heads in the plaza. "I hope you two have a wonderful time together. And when this kid robs you blind, don't say I didn't warn you." Her heels clicked angrily across the pavement until she vanished around the corner. Jonathan exhaled, feeling something heavy lift from his chest. For the first time in years he felt unshackled, as though he had been freed from a false life he hadn't realized he was living. He looked down at Gabriel, who stared back at him, wide-eyed and uncertain. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," Jonathan said quietly. "No one should talk to you like that." "It's okay, sir," Gabriel replied with a slight shrug, his tone far too grown up for his age. "I'm used to it. Mrs. Victoria's not the first person to think that about it, to me." As they walked toward the restaurant, Jonathan noticed something that made him smile. Gabriel's lips moved faintly as they passed shop fronts, his eyes scanning the signs as though he were practicing something. Jonathan pointed to a sign outside a Mexican restaurant. "Do you know what that says?" Gabriel hesitated for a second. "Casa de la Abuela. It means grandmother's house in Spanish," he said softly, a faint blush creeping onto his face. "I taught myself from books people threw away." Jonathan stopped in his tracks, stunned. "You taught yourself?" Gabriel gave a shy nod. "Yes, sir. I know English, of course, and some French, too. Not perfectly, but enough to read and understand a little. I found some old dictionaries and—" He suddenly looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, I know it sounds strange." "Strange?" Jonathan's voice carried quiet admiration. "Gabriel, that's remarkable." A mix of pride and anger welled up in him. Pride in this boy's resilience, and anger at a world that let a child with so much promise live on the streets? Why did some people squander opportunities they barely noticed, while others would give anything just for a chance? Jonathan pondered this as he and Gabriel stepped into a quiet yet refined restaurant he had visited countless times. The maitre d' greeted him with polished professionalism, but his attention briefly shifted to the boy at Jonathan's side. Gabriel's eyes were wide, taking in every detail, slightly overwhelmed by the polished decor and soft clink of silverware. "Order whatever you like," Jonathan said gently. "Anything at all." Gabriel opened the menu, scanning the pages with focused intensity. His lips moved slightly as he read, but Jonathan soon realized the boy wasn't only studying the descriptions, he was studying the prices. Gabriel was clearly trying to select the cheapest thing. "Gabriel," Jonathan said with a small smile, "I want you to pick what you truly want to eat, not the least expensive. Understand?" Gabriel blinked in surprise. How did you know?" "Because I would have done the same thing," Jonathan replied, his smile softening. "My father once told me, kindness doesn't have a price, but it has value. And right now, the value is you feeling like you belong here." While waiting for the food, Jonathan started asking questions, and little by little, Gabriel's world unfolded. Not only did he attend night classes, but he consistently ranked at the top of his class. Despite living on the streets, he looked out for others, sharing scraps of food and shielding younger children from harm. And those tattered books he rescued from trash bins? They weren't just for passing time. Gabriel devoured them, wrote thoughtful essays on fairness and society, and displayed an insight and depth that would put many university students to shame. "Have you ever thought about going to college?" Jonathan asked. Gabriel gave a small laugh, but it carried no bitterness, just a touch of realism. "Sir, I can barely afford food. College? That's too big a dream for someone like me." "Someone like you?" Jonathan echoed. "Gabriel, someone exactly like you is who should be in college." He paused, an idea forming. "How about a little test? Would you try something for me?" Gabriel tilted his head. "What kind of test?" Jonathan pulled out his phone and opened a translation app. "Talk to me in French. About anything you want. I just want to hear your level." For a moment Gabriel hesitated. Then he began to speak. His words were fluid, his accent clear, his sentences woven with surprising elegance as he described his dream of studying literature one day. Jonathan noticed heads turning. Several diners had stopped eating to listen. An elegant woman seated nearby finally stood and approached, smiling warmly. "Excuse me," she said in crisp English. "I couldn't help overhearing. I teach languages at Columbia University, and I must say, it's rare to hear such beautiful, self-taught French." Gabriel flushed with shy pride. "Thank you, ma'am. I learn from books, and sometimes I watch movies with subtitles at the library when I can. Mostly, I just practice alone." The woman introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Chun. With Jonathan's approval, she sat at their table. "Have you ever taken a placement exam, TOEFL, SAT?" Gabriel shook his head. "No, ma'am, I've never had the money." Dr. Chun glanced at Jonathan, an unspoken understanding passing between them. "Our university has scholarships for extraordinary students in difficult circumstances. If you're interested, I could arrange for some free assessments." Gabriel looked at Jonathan as if asking permission to dream. That would be incredible." Jonathan felt something stir deep in his chest, something he hadn't felt since his son was alive. It was purpose. "Dr. Chun," he said, "could we schedule those tests next week?" She smiled. "Let's not wait. Gabriel, why don't you come to campus tomorrow? I'd like some colleagues to meet you. I think you might be perfect for a pilot program we're starting." She left her card on the table and departed, but not before arranging the meeting. Gabriel sat back, stunned. "Mr. Jonathan, I don't even know how to thank you. Nobody's ever believed in me like this before." Jonathan reached across the table. You don't owe me thanks, Gabriel. Just keep being yourself. Show the world what you can do. He hesitated, then added softly, I should tell you something. I had a son once. He passed away 5 years ago. He was your age. And today, for the first time since then, I feel like maybe everything led to this moment, to meeting you. Gabriel nodded quietly, sensing the weight of the confession. You said, had. Can I ask what happened? Cancer, Jonathan said. 2 years of fighting. He was like you, smart, compassionate, always thinking of others, even when he was in pain. Seeing you today reminded me there's still so much good in the world. What Jonathan didn't know was that while he was finding hope, someone else was cultivating spite. Across town, Victoria sat at the bar of an exclusive private club, her face a mask of scorn as she surrounded herself with friends who shared her prejudices. In her version of the story, she was the wronged woman, betrayed by a man who had lost his mind, tricked by a clever street kid hungry for money. But bitterness makes careless tongues, and some of her companions weren't just listening, they were recording. And in the era of instant sharing, words like hers rarely stayed hidden. 3 days later, Victoria awoke to chaos. Her phone buzzed non-stop. The video of her rant had gone viral under the hashtag #EliteRacism, spreading like wildfire. Millions had seen it. These people just want handouts. They'll rob you blind. Beggars are worthless. Her own words, played back for the entire world to judge. Calls started pouring in. The first was from Marcus, her boss at the high-end advertising agency. His voice was cold and brief. Victoria, you're terminated. Clients are canceling left and right. We can't be associated with this. This wasn't just a misstep. It was the kind of behavior that reflected on the entire company. Then came Amanda, Victoria's closest friend and the one who planned all the high society events. I'm sorry, Vic, she said, her tone firm but cold. You're out. The rest of the girls are furious. You've humiliated us all. From there, the unraveling was swift. Membership to her exclusive club was revoked. Calls to friends went unanswered. Even her upscale apartment, shared with 2 roommates, became hostile ground when they demanded she pack up and leave. While Victoria watched her carefully built world collapse, Gabriel's life was moving in the opposite direction. At Columbia University, he wasn't just doing well, he was extraordinary. His performance stunned not only Dr. Chun, but a panel of seasoned professors. His scores on the language proficiency tests shattered records. In 2 decades of teaching, I've never met a self-taught student with this level of mastery, said Dr. Martinez, the head of the Modern Languages Department. Gabriel isn't just eligible for a full scholarship, he's the kind of student we want the world to know about. Jonathan stood back, pride swelling in his chest. Watching Gabriel stride through the ivy-covered campus, confidently discussing French literature with scholars, was like witnessing a small miracle unfold. Are you sure this is what you want? Jonathan asked as they left an academic council meeting. Gabriel grinned, gripping the acceptance letter that promised to change everything. Mr. Jonathan, for the first time in my life, I've never been more sure. At that moment, Jonathan's phone buzzed. It was Victoria. Her voice was shaky, almost unrecognizable. Jonathan, please, you have to help me. Everything's falling apart because of that stupid video. I didn't mean it. I was upset. You know me. Jonathan's tone was steady, unmoved. You showed exactly who you are, Victoria. Those weren't words said in passing. That was your real self speaking. But you don't get it, she pressed, panic rising. I lost my job, my friends, everything. People are threatening me online. Can you please post something to defend me? Just something. Jonathan glanced at Gabriel through the glass wall of a nearby lecture hall, watching him absorb a philosophy lecture like a man starved for knowledge finally fed. Victoria, Jonathan said quietly, 3 days ago, you told me I was foolish for treating Gabriel like an equal human being. Today, that same young man just earned a full ride to one of the country's best universities. Tell me, who was really right?" The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. "Your consequences aren't my fault or Gabriel's," Jonathan continued. "They are the direct result of your choices, your words. And honestly, for once, I think justice has found its mark." When he ended the call, Gabriel joined him. "She wanted help?" he asked. "She did," Jonathan replied. "But here's the difference between you and her. When you needed a hand, it wasn't because you had torn someone down or exposed prejudice. It was because life hadn't given you a fair chance." Later that afternoon, as Gabriel browsed the shelves of the campus bookstore, choosing his first stack of books, Victoria sat alone in an apartment stripped of warmth. Her phone glowed with comments dissecting, word by word, the cruelty she had unleashed on the world. Jonathan decided to use his growing influence in a way Victoria never would, by lifting others up. On his social media, he shared a picture of Gabriel studying at Columbia's library with the caption, "Privilege isn't about where you start, it's about seeing potential in unexpected places and being humble enough to learn from it." When Victoria saw the post, the truth sank in. She hadn't just lost a boyfriend, she'd missed the chance to grow into a better version of herself. Her prejudice had cost her everything. Meanwhile, Gabriel's quiet dignity was transforming his life. He didn't need to belittle anyone. His kindness and focus spoke louder than any insult ever could. The very traits she mocked had become the foundation of his success. And there was still one more twist coming, something Jonathan had uncovered that would make their story even more powerful. Half a year later, Gabriel walked across the stage at the university's annual awards ceremony. Applause thundered as the dean praised him as not only the top freshman of the year, but a reminder that true worth lies in character, not background. Jonathan watched from the front row, emotional. His own discovery still amazed him. Gabriel had been born in the same hospital, on the same day, almost the same hour as Jonathan's late son, David. When Jonathan shared this with Gabriel that morning, the boy's response was simple but profound. "Maybe your son sent me to you." During his speech, Gabriel even addressed those who doubted him. "I'm thankful even to the people who underestimated me. They taught me that the best answer to prejudice is success." Victoria saw it all from the small apartment where she now lived, surviving on a modest call center job. Her former friends posted photos with Gabriel at charity galas, praising him as an inspiration, the same word she once used mockingly. Jonathan's restaurant chain now employed dozens of homeless youth. Gabriel was on track to become one of the youngest lawyers to graduate with highest honors. And Victoria? She was a spectator to everything she had thrown away, facing the consequences of revealing her true character. The story's real victory wasn't in her fall, it was in Gabriel's rise. He had turned every insult into motivation, proving that resilience and integrity can turn even the hardest setbacks into stepping stones. Sometimes life brings people together not by coincidence, but because they are meant to help each other grow. Subscribe for more stories showing how compassion always defeats prejudice.